did his anterior segment fellowship from Shankar Nethralaya after doing his MS, and worked as a consultant in cataract and glaucoma and refractive surgery in Shankar Nethralaya, Chennai, and then he was in Shankar Nethralaya, Kolkata, after which he is now in a group practice in Nethralaya and in BBI Foundation in Kolkata. He's a high volume cataract and refractive surgeon, and also does glaucoma. So over to you, Dr. Sagar, for your presentation.
Thank you very much, sir. Is my slide visible?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. At the outset, I thank Dr. Ashok for giving me this opportunity to be presenting in this August panel. And the topic that he gave me was cataract surgery in small eyes and post-RK eyes. Now, let's do a little revision as to understand what exactly is the small eye. And this was a paper which came in JCRS 2015. And very nicely, schematically, it has shown that how different types of small eyes are there. And what we essentially understand is microphthalmos is basically a symmetrically small eye. And it's basically the axial length is less than 2 standard deviations of what it should be. And when we talk about nano-ophthalmos, it's basically a small eye with thickened sclera. As we can see here, white portion is quite thick. And then there is something called as relative anterior microphthalmos, where the axial length is actually normal, but you have a crowded anterior chamber. So small eyes are something which all of us face on a day-to-day basis. And they do come for in surgery. As a practicing glaucoma surgeon, I do get these cases quite a bit, and even in general practice, you will get it. So first thing, you need to basically differentiate it from a condition, differentiate it into different parts. So when we talk about relative anterior microphthalmos, we have to, as we discussed, that axial length should be more than 20 millimeters. The horizontal corneal diameter is around 11 or less. Most important is anterior chamber depth is less than 2.2. And patient should not have any ocular malformation. Now, let's look as to what happens in nano-ophthalmos. So nano-ophthalmos is a condition where patient's axial length usually is below 20.5. The retinochoroidal scleral thickness is more than 1.7 millimeters, and there is no ocular malformation. And what we call it as lens axial ratio, which is basically the lens thickness by the axial length of the eye, should be more than 0.2. So if these criteria are met, your patient becomes a nano-ophthalmos and your treatment radically changes. So this differentiation is very important before you approach these patients. And then there is another subset, which is essentially just a small eye without having all these issues. So axial length of around 21, borderline narrow, but those can be treated in a different way. Now, most of these small eyes, very important that you should do a gonioscopy, because if there is an angle closure, you need to basically do YAG-PI for these patients, because even during a standard phacoemulsification, you can face with a condition called as aqueous misdirection. This is very important if you're dealing with nano-ophthalmos, because studies have clearly shown that if YAG-PI is done before development of peripheral anterior synecdoche, the chances that the patient will need medication becomes very, very less. So this has prognostic importance. So YAG-PI is something that one has to remember in mind. Now let's go on to a case. So Dr. Ashok asked me to present a case on relative anterior microphthalmos. So I will be presenting a case very similar to that. So this was a 48-year-old gentleman who had undergone vitrectomy with silicone oil for a retinal vasculitis with TRD. The retinal surgeon didn't want the oil to come out. So basically, patient had a total cataract. So we had to remove the cataract with the oil in situ. So these were the parameters of the patient. Axial length was around 21.97. Anterior chamber depth was 2.15. So very, very shallow anterior chamber with a lens thickness of almost 5.82, which was a total cataract. And according to the A-scan biometry, we were getting around 26 for as an emmetropic value. We chose 32 diopters because there was oil in situ. So very important to plan what viscoelastic you will use, because we have a space constraint there and we need to protect the corneal endothelium. So a combination OVD like Viscovisc is something that can be used, which one viscoelastic itself serves both the purpose. Or a lot of times this may not be available, then you can go in for a soft shell technique wherein you use a combination of Hilon 5 with Viscoat. But and if you are using Hilon 5, one has to remember that the parameters have to be low flow, because only in low flow parameters Hilon 5 stays. Now let's move on to the case. So you can see the case. This is a pupil which has basically bound down to the cataract. So what we are doing is, under the saline injection, we are trying to basically release the posterior synecdoche from both the sides. I have not stained the capsule as yet because I know that the stain will not go beyond that. So I'm using just saline to release the posterior synecdoche so that the tryptophan blue nicely goes to that. So now we have stained the capsule, and now most of these cases will have smaller pupils. So iris hooks becomes mandatory in these cases. You should never do surgeries in these eyes, thinking that you will manage. It's always better to have good exposure. In this, we are having a little smaller pupil capsular excess size, so we will deal with it later on. So as we can see that this is a direct chop, horizontal chop with a Chang's chopper. And now slowly we are basically creating small pieces out of it. And one thing very important to remember is that you have to keep your phaco tip in the center. Don't allow the pieces to come in the anterior chamber because that's where they will hit the endothelium and cause all the damage. So essentially, you're keeping everything there and let the fluidics do its work. And slowly and steadily till the last piece, you basically keep it there and everything will fall in place. So now we see that the capsular opening is small and we are going to put a 32 diopter lens. So we just basically do a small lick and enlarge this anterior capsular opening using maculocapsular excess forceps. And finally, after adequate capsule opening, we are able to put the lens in situ in the back. So this patient ultimately did well, though did not get it visually, but there was no complication the post-op period. Let's move on to another case scenario. Here's a 71-year-old gentleman, had a YAG PI done both eyes, was on Timolate, had cataract changes in both eyes, and this is what the parameters look like. Had a sclerocorneal thickness of 1.9, axial length was 19.27, IOL power was suggested around 38 to 41, and anti-chamber depth was 2.3. So obviously we are dealing here with the case of nano-ophthalmos. With nano-ophthalmos, one has to remember that we have a higher risk of complication intraoperative. It can be posterior capsular rent, aqueous misdirection, or you can have intraoperative or post-op uveal effusion, or very rarely suprachoroidal hemorrhage. Now, once a PCR happens in these cases, remember that lens that we are going to implant is a single-piece lens which cannot be put in, and you don't have a choice of putting a 3-piece lens here because that range is not available. Now, let's look at the case as to how did we manage this case. So as we can see here, we are going to do a technique called as sclerotomy. And this is basically we are hooking the inferior rectus and the medial rectus. We are going to do this in the inferior nasal quadrant. So first, this is a single quadrant sclerotomy that we are doing. 2 millimeter marking is done from the limbus, and then 4 millimeter scleral marking is done, where we basically fashion out by 4 by 4 millimeter scleral flap there. So once the flap is created about 4 millimeters from the limbus, you essentially create a small block of deep scleral tissue, and you essentially create a window in the suprachoroidal space for any uveal effusion to happen that will keep leaking from there, and it will prevent collection of fluid. So in this scenario, we have sutured it, and now we move on to the surgery. And the surgery, again, it's difficult because you don't have space there. So you have to use all the viscoelastics that we discussed and move on to the course. Here, very important thing to remember is that when you're doing side entries and the main entry, these eyes tend to have a little thicker cornea, especially in the periphery. So your standard angulations, you have to be careful. Otherwise, you might end up with a longer tunnel. So here, that point has to be remembered. And here we are making the clear corneal incision, and we are proceeding. Again, this point also is very important because we don't have too much space there. So you don't want to do a very, very vigorous hydrodissection. So it should be a very gentle hydrodissection, just enough for the nucleus to rotate. And here we are using a direct chop again and taking care of the nucleus. So this patient, we had to use a 40 diopter IOL. And the thicker IOLs are slightly difficult to handle because they come out with a thud. So be prepared for that. At the end, you will have a small thud when it comes out. It typically happens because of this thickness of the lens. So now the lens is in situ. We have sutured the main wound, and this was the post-op outcome. And the patient did very well without thinking. Now let's move on to the next spectrum. You have this gentleman who had basically YAG PI done and has cataract. But look at the axial length. Now it's almost in the range around 15. With a thick sclera. So here we are dealing with a very severe form of nano-ophthalmos. So we basically here employ a technique called as anterior lamellar sclerectomy, as described by Dr. Martin Wax. And here we essentially do a lamellar sclerectomy where we remove the scleral roof and do a V-shaped sclerectomy. Let's see how it is done. So I will just straight away show you the sclerotomy. And basically 2 millimeters, 4 millimeters from the limbus, the V-shaped incision is made, and you lift the apex of this V. So you can see how thick is the sclera. We have already de-roofed the sclera there. This you just do it in this case. I had done it in 4 quadrants. You can do it in 1 quadrant or 2 quadrants, but nowadays people recommend mainly with the inferior 2 quadrants. So here I'm basically de-roofing the other quadrant, and we again do the same thing. So basically you are removing the apex and leaving a small area of this thing, exposed supraclavicular space. So again, this case also had a small pupil as expected, and you do the surgery with the standard principles. This was the patient's recovery, and patient had an uneventful recovery. Now, this was the patient who I've been following up for almost 10 years now, and this is the eye of that patient. Unfortunately, the other eye had a SICS done elsewhere, and this eye lens was put in sulcus, and lens now has partly come out and has caused corneal decompensation in this patient. So one of the take-home points for this is that in nano-ophthalmic eyes, never do SICS. It has been proven by an RCT done by Arvind Eye Hospital, and you have to do an in-the-back placement of the IOL because these eyes tend to do well in the long run. So to sum up, these eyes have higher risk of angle closure. Do an YAG-PI if you are in the early stage of cataract. You have to do a pre-op mannitol to reduce their IOPs. Reduce the chance. You have to reduce chances of uveal effusion by doing sclerectomy, or if required, a sclerectomy also. And cornea, remember, it's thicker in the periphery, so entry wound has to be taken care of. ACD, if it is less than 2.3, again proven by a paper, there is a high chance of endothelial damage. And very important, you have to avoid interchamber collapse at all points. And vitreous tap, one has to be careful because there is a very high tendency to do vitreous tap to give more thing. But these pars planas are little displaced forwards, and they can be actually smaller than what you think. So one has to be careful in that regard. So I just have one case on posterior on RK. Time, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead. We have time. We have time.
So basically now we'll just discuss about post-RK scenarios. Again, a very challenging condition, because when you have so many RK marks on the cornea, you tend to get intimidated. Here, the main challenge is to get the IOL power calculation correct. Of course, that's beyond the purview of this talk, but what is important is that you can have variable intra-op pores with RK patients. I'll just show you a very standard RK case where you can see this is a 20 cut RK. And my way of doing it, and what is described most of the literature, is to do a scleral tunnel. So we are basically doing a temporal scleral tunnel. And here, the second important point is when you're doing site entry, you have to make sure that you're not hitting the incisions. Otherwise, they can start leaking. Otherwise, one has to remember that these eyes are myopic eyes, because that's the reason why they have undergone RK. So when you're doing phacoemulsification in these patients, you have to essentially use the same precautions that you would do for any high myopic patient. That means lower bottle height, fluidics should be controlled. There should not be too much of anterior chamber fluctuation. So here we have done the anterior chamber entry, and again the phacoemulsification is done with the standard way. So there's nothing different in the surgery as such, but you have to be watchful on this RK incision so that they don't give away in the during the surgery. At the end, it's always a good idea to suture these wounds because the sclera has low rigidity. There are chances that it may be unstable, so it's better to suture them. I'll show you a next case, which is a little more difficult. So this was a patient who was a one-eyed patient, other eye lost due to RD, and patient had RK 25 years back with just hand movement vision. And this was the picture of the patient. So a dense scar in the center with around 20 cut RK. Now, how do we handle this? We thought, let's do a phaco first and later on decide about the cornea. So we did the calculation, and the lens power that came out was around -8. Now let's look at the case. So we go ahead with, So we go ahead with the case.
It's not moving.
His connection is lost.
Sorry, yes, it's got stuck.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's no problem. Take your time.
Yeah. Is my screen visible now?
Yes, yes, it is.
So the challenge in this case was basically to get the rhexis correct. So rhexis was the main difficulty in this case. And we, with the tilt of the globe and with the variable globe, we were able to get the rhexis done. And here we are completing the rhexis. And again, we are making a scleral incision here. And the second challenge was to get the chop right. So here, again, the Chang chopper came to our rescue. So what happens is basically you feel the nucleus with the help of this blunt end of the Chang chopper, which is a curved end, and you basically try to get the first chop. Once the first chop is done, then things fall in place, and slowly and steadily you can basically debuild the nucleus and remove the nucleus pieces one by one. And as the surgery progresses, we can see that we are able to take care of the nucleus. And finally, at one point, once the nucleus are, we found that one of the RK incisions started leaking. So keep the suture handy, suture, and give an interrupted suture. And in this case, we also put an ECR because axial length was very high, and we did notice some amount of zonal weakening here. So we did put a CTR there, and here we are putting -8 diopter hydrophobic acrylic IOL in the bag. And finally, this is how it looked at the end of the suture. Again, one or two incisions also again opened up. So make sure that all the incisions are closed before you patch the eye. And I sutured here the side port also and the main port also. So this patient actually achieved ambulatory vision after the surgery. His vision was around 2/60. And this is how the pre-op and post-op looked. And he has become mobile now. So I would just sum up that in RK patients, scleral incision is something that helps. A lower bottle height is what you would like to do. And watch out for these RK leaks, and always suture the main wound, and sometimes require side port entry also.